All right, welcome back to Waste Some Time with Jason Green. I am Jason Green, bringing you brand new interviews right here on YouTube. Today, I'm excited because this is a first. My guest, probably the first time he sat down for a long form interview, and we're going to be discussing 40 plus years of RATT. And in full transparency, I am the tour manager for Stephen Pearcy and Warren DeMartini of RATT. So my guest, Marshall Berle, former manager of Van Halen, former agent, and former manager of RATT, but not only a manager, directed many of the music videos, had a lot to do with the success. In my opinion, there's probably two people outside of the band members themselves who had the most to do with the success of RATT. I would say that would be producer Beau Hill and manager Marshall Berle. We'll talk to Marshall right after this. Just wanna waste some time with you. Sometimes it seems too good to be true. Nobody out there can waste time with you. All right, please welcome Marshall Berle.
Hi, Jason.
All right, Marshall, I'm so glad you were able to do this.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm happy to do it for you.
So before we get into RATT, I want to know a little bit more about yourself. Now, obviously, most people watching know that your father his brother was Uncle Milton Berle, but he really was your uncle. But tell me a little bit about your growing up.
I was born in Hollywood, California, at the Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital. Same place, same room, same date as Belinda Carlisle, which is kind of weird. I born and raised in Hollywood, lived there up until 1995, 50 years almost. And I went to Fairfax High School with Phil Spector. He was my friend. And from there, I had a thing for music. I always loved music from the time I was a little kid. And I used to go to see rock shows. They weren't rock, they were rhythm and blues shows. Little Richard, Fats Domino. And I was just totally hooked on music. And when I was 18, I joined the Navy. I spent 4 years in United States Navy aboard the USS Rochester, based in Yokosuka, Japan. And when I left there, honorably discharged in 1960, my uncle Milton suggested that I apply for a job at the William Morris Agency, which is one of the biggest theatrical agencies in Hollywood, which I did, and they accepted me. I started out in the mailroom, and I wanted to be in the variety department, which is what they called it then. They didn't have a music department, and because I liked live performances. So I was an agent trainee at William Morris, and listening to the radio all the time, listening to bands. And there was an artist that William Morris represented called Dick and Dee Dee. They had a top 5 single, and they were headlining at the Hollywood Palladium, and their agent got sick. And I was a trainee at William Morris, and he asked me to go to the show and represent the company. So when I went there, the opening act was the Beach Boys. And I'd known who they were. I heard them on the radio, and they blew everybody away in the audience at the Palladium. I went backstage and introduced myself to their father and mother and met the guys. And I said, they didn't have an agent. I said, why don't you come with us, William Morris Agency? And they heard that and they got all excited. So I went back to William Morris office and I told my boss, who I was a secretary for, that I was going to bring the Beach Boys in to sign. And they think I was an agent. So he let me use his office, and he sat out in front where I usually sit. I brought the band in. We signed them to a 5-year contract to William Morris. They took off and they became huge. And for the next 3 years, I was involved with them, with other projects, including the Beatles, which was the first pay-per-view telecast. The Beatles, and I think they were in Washington, D.C., and the Beach Boys were in Burbank Studios and NBC. And that was a big hit, big success.
You were invited by Brian Epstein to meet the Beatles, right?
Yes. I asked my boss if I could. I heard about the Beatles through Lou Adler, who was a big record producer in LA, and I worked with him a lot. And his secretary told me about the Beatles, and they had this. So I got Brian Epstein's cable number, and I sent him a cable, and I said, "We'd like to offer you a 30-day tour at $10,000 a show. Please advise." He answered me, and he said, "Please let me know when you're in London, and let's discuss this further." So I got all excited. I mean, the Beatles manager, it's like the biggest thing. So I went down to the head of the office, the boss, and I said, "I'd like to go to London." He said, "You're not even an agent. And why are we going to send you to, who the hell are the Beatles? And we got an office there. We don't need you to go." Long story short, I didn't go. And I think GAC or ICM signed them. And that was a fun thing. But a lot of those kind of things happened while I was at William Morris. But that was a big thrill for me.
It seems like you had an instinct for bands, and that goes throughout your career, sort of taking a shot on bands and knowing maybe before some other people did.
Yeah, that's true. One of the things I tried to stay on top of was who was getting airplay real early, and before they even became famous, and things like that. And that worked out great. We did a tour with Marvin Gaye, and then I left William Morris because I wanted to start my own business, and I got sidetracked and wound up with some people that I don't want to talk about, but it wasn't a good thing. And I went off on a completely different trip, got in trouble, got run out of LA by the wise guys, and I went on the road. My mother was married to a gentleman who sold clothes, junior sophisticates. So I got a job on the road, and I hated it. I was like thrown out of Hollywood, because of the trouble I got into, and nobody talked to me. So I was away for about a year and a half, and I got a call from a friend of mine who was working his wife was working at the Whiskey, and asked me if I wanted to come to Sunnyvale, California, to open a Whiskey A Go-Go and book all the acts in there. And I flipped out. I drove from from Chicago back to San Francisco, or to New York, turned the guy's car in, flew to San Francisco, and we opened the Whiskey A Go-Go in Sunnyvale. And one of the bands that was almost a house band was the Gollywogs, who later became known as the Creedence Clearwater Revival. And so during that 1 year I was away, I got to know a lot of bands, including Big Brother and Moby Grape, and all the bands that were happening at the time in the psychedelic movement in San Francisco. So I got a job. I called the president of Associated Booking Corporation, and he gave me a job. And I drove from Sunnyvale back to Beverly Hills and in a beat up car. And immediately I signed Spirit and Canned Heat and the association. I didn't sign Creedence, but we were their agent. So we had Ike and Tina Turner was another one. So for the next 3 years, I was an agent for a lot of these artists and got to know them really well.
Yeah, that began in 1965, just to give an idea of where we stand. So you were booking Spirit, and Spirit did shows with Pink Floyd as well, right?
Yeah, actually, yes, they did. I'm sorry. Pink Floyd was one of my clients when they first started, and they were on a brochure. I don't know if I sent that to you, but
yeah, I have the image. We can show.
Yeah, and Pink Floyd and a bunch of other bands. But my relationship did not last too long with them, but it was great. And all these so-called psychedelic bands, and it was actually it was heaven for me being back in action and working with these bands.
So in 1976, you go to the Whiskey as a booking agent, right?
Well, let me give you a little history. When I was at William Morris, I became very close with the Whiskey A Go-Go's owner, Elmer Valentine, and he everything I brought in, he put up at the Whiskey, and we became very good friends, along with Lou Adler and Mario Maglieri. So I had a history there, and the Whiskey became a discotheque in the 70s, and then some people took it over and were putting weird shows in because basically rock wasn't happening. But what was happening, there was a groundswell for the so-called punk bands and new wave bands. So Elmer called me and asked me if I'd come to the Whiskey and reopen it and book bands in there, all these new local bands. So Dee Dee Keel was there, a big help, and we worked together. And I got a hold of a guy named Kim Fowley, who was the manager of the Runaways, and I asked him if he would come in and produce. When I say produce, present these acts, these new wave, these punk bands. So we had Kim Fowley presents, and that took off automatically. And that went on for a good 6-7 months. And Kim Fowley called me and he said, "Hey, listen, there's a band in Pasadena." He said, "I'll give you their phone number. If you bring them in, if you make any kind of deal, you got to make sure that they do one of my songs." Kim was always doing that. And he gave me the name of Dave Roth and a number. So I call him up. I have no idea who he is. And the band was called Van Halen. So I called Dave up and I said, "You want to play the Whiskey, blah, blah, blah." He said, "Yeah, man, that'd be great." I said, "I got a contract for you." He said, "Bring it to he says, "We're playing the Pasadena Civic on such and such a night. Bring the contract and I'll sign it." So I go there and I couldn't get in the building. There was 3,500 kids in there. It was packed. And I'm going, "What the hell's going on here?" And I get in, I go in, and out comes the band. And I've never seen anything like it. And I've seen a lot of great guitar players and bands. But when I saw them, and they were doing 3-part harmonies, and Edward was just blowing my mind. The hair stood up on the back. Anyway, when the show is over, I go backstage, I meet Dave, and hand him the contract for the Whiskey. And he signed it, and he introduced me to Ed and Al and Michael. And I said, "You guys should have a record deal." And Edward looked at his brother, real weird, like, "Yeah, right." And cut. Long story short, I started working with them, put him in the Whiskey, headlining them, put him in the Starwood. And eventually when they were ready, I called up Mo Austin, the chairman of Warner Brothers, and Ted Templeman, who I thought would be the perfect producer for Van Halen because of their harmonies. They come out to the Starwood, and it was pouring rain that night. Nobody was in the club. They come in, Mo Austin, Ted Templeman, and a couple other guys. And we go upstairs to the VIP section. I go backstage and I tell the band, I said, "Listen, there's nobody here, but everybody's here. Go out and do a great show." They go out, do a show. There's nobody out there. There's like 4 kids or roadies or something. And when the show was over, Mo Austin leans over to me and he goes, "Are you the manager?" I said, "No." He says, "You are now." He said, "Come on, let's go meet the band." So we go backstage. I walk in with him right then and there. Mo says, "We want to sign you." And so that's how that happened. That evolved from the Whiskey. And that was in 1977, 78.
Edward Van Halen did an interview in Guitar Player magazine in 1978, and he recounts basically everything you just said. I mean, he tells that version of how it happened, and it happens fast. How crazy! You're sort of a manager by by association. We need somebody. We're going to make this deal. A record deal, Ted Templeman, manager, all in the same a day. And Van Halen, again, a band that you saw something in. People, fans might have been knowing about it, but the world didn't quite know about it yet. And you had this, you knew to bring the right people to see them. Obviously, they blow up really fast, right? Van Halen didn't take long, did it?
No. And what I didn't know when I took them back there, when I said, you got to have a record deal, I didn't know that Gene Simmons had flown them to New York and spent money on making a great demo, which is a fabulous demo. And their manager at the time was a guy named Bill Aucoin. And Gene told me, he gave this the tapes to Bill, and Bill goes, what the hell is this? He didn't like it. He said, they're terrible. Long story short, Gene gave him the masters back. I didn't know any of that. That's why Edward gave me that look like, yeah, right, we need a record deal. And it happened. It was all good, great time. And that ended for me in 79. And right after that, I formed Time Coast Communications, was a record label, and started signing the local bands. And
Marshall, I got to ask you, and I don't know how much you want to say about it, but why did the Van Halen relationship end?
Well, honestly, I was a total stranger to them. They hardly knew me, but I was working with them and building them up. I said, look, I want to get you a record deal. That was the whole point. I got them a record deal. I did not want to be their manager because I had just gone through another situation with another band. I was tired of being a manager because it's most of the time it's like a babysitter job. And anyway, I don't want to get into specifics, but one of the members of the band told me that I can only talk to him and not talk to anybody else. And I don't want to use the words that were used. Long story short, we parted company at the end of 78, which was fine by me, fine by them. And just on a note, I think after I signed RATT and they took off, we were playing, I'm trying to think of the name of the venue, in Irvine Meadows.
Was it that the Irvine Amphitheater?
Yeah. And I think Bon Jovi was headlining, and it was RATT was headlining. Yeah. Bon Jovi was opening, and Edward came backstage, and we hugged and blah blah blah. And I saw him 2007, I think, when Wolfgang was playing in the band the first time around. And that was the last time I saw Ed. Kissed me on the lips in front of my daughter and his fiance at the time. And it was great. It was good. I love Al, love Ed. Great guys. I had a great time with Dave. That was cool. We did some cool things. But I went back to the whiskey. Elmer gave me an office where one of the dressing rooms are now, overlooking on the top floor, and walled it in and everything. And I started signing acts, working with bands to record. And Dee Dee, she's the greatest. If it wasn't for Dee Dee, there wouldn't be a Whiskey A Go-Go. She told me, she says, hey, there's this band called RATT. He said, you should grab them. They're really great. So I said, let's have a meeting. So she brought the band up to my office at the Whiskey. And I said, look, let's work. We'll work the band, and I'll get you a record deal. And but first, let's make a little EP. And we did it on Time Coast Communications. We made an EP, and I hired some local radio guys, and they got it on the radio. And we sold almost 50,000 vinyl EPs, at which point Kenny Austin, who was Mo Austin's son, was working at Atlantic Records, and he said, "Man, I want to sign this band to Atlantic." So he brings Doug Morris, the president of Atlantic, to a show we were doing in Beverly Hills, and same thing happened right after the set. I bring Doug and Kenny backstage and a couple other people from Atlantic, and Doug Morris walked up to the band and says, "We love you guys. We want you with Atlantic." And so they signed him. And Doug told me, he says, "I got this great guy, Bo Hill. He's a new producer. He doesn't have a resume, but he'd be perfect for the band." And I said, "Do it." And that's how it started with Atlantic.
So before we go too much into Atlantic, I got a few questions about Time Coast. Touring with Stephen, people often bring their memorabilia to get signed, and we see Stephen enjoys seeing which is an original when we see a Time Coast record. And so the way that you can tell the difference between an Atlantic recording and a Time Coast recording is this is the picture that you would see on the back of the Time Coast record. And they look a bit different. This was a fashion rock, fashion metal, a term you've heard from RATT.
Yeah,
and that's the Time Coast. You see it there in the corner. And so how Time Coast was your label, correct?
Yes, it's my label, and I started it. I had a partner, Mark Leonard, who was he was the money guy, and without Mark, we wouldn't have been able to make this thing happen. And it was great. Time Coast took off. RATT took off. We started getting big airplay in LA, which was fascinating because no unsigned band, unsigned to a major, could get that kind of airplay.
Mm-hmm. Now, the question that goes with this record every time we see it is, when is it going to come out again? It's never in the box sets. It's never been released. Go ahead.
You mean the EP?
The EP. Do you think in our time we'll ever see that released?
Atlantic put the EP out on a CD, and only a handful were sold, and then the rights reverted back to me. And it's what can I tell you about that? That's where Warren and Stephen are right now is a result of the other three guys. There was a lot of when we first started out, Robin and I were like, we were together. Robin helped me. We came up with the ideas for all the videos. But after a while, everybody, I don't know what happened, because in 1989, my 7-year contract was up with them, and they wanted to sign with somebody else. For whatever reason, because we're all good friends. And I think what it was, the reason was $2 million that they were going to get in advance, which I could have gotten for them, but that's a whole other story. Mm-hmm. And so they signed with another management company. But then things started falling apart. When Robin passed away, Robin was really like the leader, he was the boss. Everybody looked up to him. And when he passed away, I guess things started to people started to get weird, and lawsuits were coming and this and that. So the EP, actually, if you like to know, and now that I remember, I think I gave all my rights up to the EP, and so did Mark. We gave it all back to RATT because they were claiming some legal issue, and I wasn't going to fight them. That's their work. That's their business. And I respect that. They would have to do it themselves. That's the only way it's ever going to come out. And good luck with that right now.
It's something that Stephen always, I would say, threatens. He always says, one day I'm going to put out that EP. So who knows? But it is It is a commonly asked question, and that EP is definitely surrounded with a lot of legal issues. And RATT was a young band at the time, and Stephen and Robin wrote most of the songs on that EP. And so there was also some songwriting issues, though. Some of the songs that were brought in may have been songs that Robin had used in other bands. And so some of the litigation happens later, which we'll get into because it's more from Out of the Cellar, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the EP does amazingly well, as you said, for a little independent EP. It's amazing how many were sold. When you bring the band to Atlantic, it ends up selling a ton more copies. More people bought the RATT EP after Out of the Cellar, right? Or during Out of the Cellar.
That's true. It sold quite well when Atlantic was distributing it. Yes.
You said to me that as a manager, you didn't get involved in the studio or the music. You really were strictly business.
Yeah. In my experience, from the very beginning, working with the Beach Boys, I realized I'm not a musician. I'm not a writer. I don't have any business in the studio or telling them, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that. That wasn't my trip. I stayed away from the studio of all the bands and all the artists, and I let them do their thing. They know better than me.
It's a rare thing, though, to know, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm not going to get too involved and I'm not going to try to control every aspect. And the reason I know that that's how you felt was because, Robin was sort of the lead guitar player at one point, or they were co-lead guitar players. And as people saw Warren's talent, Beau Hill particularly thought that he's got something.
Well, I think Beau is the one that would be calling the shots in the studio about guitar playing, and Warren was great. He still is, mm-hmm. And he's just a great musician. And as far as the leads go, that was I don't know if I wasn't in the studio, so I don't know if Beau decided that or Robin and Warren. Warren can tell you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Warren will tell me backstage. Now the trick is, can I get him to tell me on my show? But that's a listen. I'm getting your first long form interview, so anything can happen. So I want to talk about the singles and the videos you made, because that is a part that you were very much involved in, and so. First single was "Think You're Tough." That was what was used to promote the EP and was getting radio play.
Right. I eventually made a video. I don't know if you ever saw that with Ozzy. But anyway, when Atlantic put out when they released the LP, and Round was the single, and we hired every radio promotion guy in the country. And we got it on a lot of stations, got a lot of ads, but after 3 or 4 weeks, it started declining, and I was really concerned about that. And coincidentally, at the same time, MTV was starting to take off. Quiet Riot was such a big success, and I saw an opportunity there. So I went to my Uncle Mill. I went to the Friars Club in Beverly Hills, where he holds court, and I said, I'd like you to be in a video for a band I'm managing, and you can wear your dress and you play 2 parts, a man and a woman. And anyway, he said, okay, he'd do it for me. We were super tight, my uncle and I. And so Atlantic sent us to a production company. Back then, it was such a new medium. Everybody wanted to become a video maker and stuff. So they sent us to this group of people that were from London. And I sit in the office with them, and I said, this is what I want to do. And I told them, put the band, we'll get like a place. The band will be up in the attic, and they'll be playing. Downstairs will be a formal dining room. And I'll have my Uncle Milton And they go, "Who's your Uncle Milton?" I said, "Milton Berle." And they go, "Excuse me, who's Milton Berle?" And I went, "Oh, like, anyway, they didn't know who he was, but we did it. And Don Letts was the director. And, we talked. I told him the whole trip, and he did it, man. He pulled it off. So we sent it to MTV, and of course, it's Mr. Television, the most famous guy on television.
The
Who
first
started television, Milton.
the first person on television. I tell young people, Milton Berle was television. If it wasn't, that's the first face many people saw.
Yeah, they called him Mr. Television. So Atlantic MTV picks it up, and immediately NBC, CBS, ABC jumped all over this. Mr. Television becomes Mr. Video or MTV or something. And we got tremendous press, and then the record just took off. The video was great. The band was they looked terrific in it. They were great. Warren doing his little stunt. Oh, that's cool, man.
Yeah, there they are.
I think that I'm trying to remember that could have been a Friars Club roast. That picture. I'm not sure, but they did. I took them to 2 Friars Club roasts, which are, people that don't know, they're X-rated back in the mid 80s. A lot of these famous comedians, including Johnny Carson, would tell dirty jokes, and it was like men only. So the guys, they loved it. They loved being there, and they would laugh so hard. Robin loved it, and Milton loved it because he got a brand new career. He was getting so much publicity, and that just took off.
I want to talk just a little bit more about Round and Round. And you did say that it brought new publicity to a younger audience, bringing it to Milton Berle. And later, 1985, Back to the Future comes out and refers to Milton Berle on television, things like this. And I think younger people were starting to remember him. But I'm such a fan of television history, music history, video history. And I've always wondered where the Round and Round video was shot, and did Warren actually jump through the ceiling? All these questions. And everyone in the band always says, you got to ask Marshall. So while I have you here, you got to tell me.
All right. The video was shot in a warehouse, an empty warehouse down in downtown LA. I haven't been in LA in 30 years, but it was an empty warehouse. And we had a set for the band, and Warren did jump down through something onto how they shot it. I wasn't there for that take, but he did do it. And he jumped on the table, and I think that video cost $20,000. When we did Lay It Down at Paramount, that was $100,000. But we shot it real cheap, round and round. I want to digress just for a minute.
Sure.
And I did go to a band rehearsal before they started recording the Atlantic album. And I remember Bo was there, and I heard them play Round and Round for the first time. And I go, that's it. And I did. I told Bo Hill. I even told the guys, if they remember, that's a hit record. And it was. But I think the band, anyway, getting back, we had a catering truck that Milton had a little area to put his dress on. He had his makeup people there, his wardrobe guy. And it was a guerrilla shoot, man. Used the least amount of equipment. Milton paid for he brought his own costume, his dinner jackets and his gown and all that stuff. But that's where it was shot. And Warren did jump on that table. He did do it.
That video becomes a piece of history for younger people watching it. MTV was a special time. It wasn't like RATT was on the Headbangers Ball late at night. No, it was on with whoever the most major artist was at the time. Michael Jackson, Madonna, whatever was on TV, you would get the RATT video. And because it was a new medium, there was only so many videos. So you knew you were going to get that round and round video of every hour or so.
Yeah, if I got to be honest, Milton, if it wasn't for my Uncle Milton, I don't know if they would have played. I still don't know. It doesn't matter, but it was great. And to have, when you think about the budget and the way it was shot, we shot it in 16 millimeter, I think. It was very low budget, and it worked out great. So it's like, even today, a band can get together and spend $10, if even that, to record a song at home and get it on YouTube and become an overnight sensation. They can do it themselves now. But when I see videos with some of these current major stars who are spending $1 million or more, if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage. So,
very well said. Marshall, did you go on tour with RATT?
Yes. the famous green bus. That was our first bus. It's in the video Wanted Man.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to get to that video. I want to go through them, but what an experience! All of a sudden, you're on tour with these younger guys. Warren was probably, at that point, maybe 19, 20. I don't know, not very old. So what's it like sharing a bus with RATT?
Well, I did go on tour before RATT with Van Halen, but with RATT it was different because before that I was always flying to gigs, never used a tour bus, and so we got our bus. I got the back lounge area. That was my place, and the guys, Bobby and Stephen and Warren and Robin, they were in those side bunks, It was, but after every show, the fans would come and leave their panties, brassieres, all kinds of stuff. Stephen would hang them up on the bus. And after about 3 weeks, man, it was a little rank in that bus. We had to air it out. Gee, I don't know if we should talk about that.
No, I think that one's all right. Here's a picture of you and Robin.
That picture is taken in the back of the bus, and we were smiling. And that's where we were talking about making Wanted Man, the video, and how we do it and this and that. And that's a great picture.
I think it's okay to say now that you and Robin might have been experimenting with mind-altering substances. Is that okay to say?
Yes, mind-altering substances. Yeah, Robin and I would take LSD quite a bit. And that's why we came up with these great ideas. And that didn't last too long because I wasn't into drugs or anything. But that kind of experience was okay with me. But I hated any kind of drugs. Unfortunately, Robin lived with Nikki, Nikki Sixx, when I first met him. And anyway, I don't want to get into that. Rob, I love Robin, and I'm sorry to see him go. But yes, we did create some ideas by altering our perception.
Yes, well, very well said. So, okay, we talked about Round and Round. Let's go through some of these videos real quick because you were such a part of them. The Back for More video, also in 1984. Tell me a little bit about that one.
That was shot at the Roxy. I'm trying to remember. I haven't seen him in so long. I think Nikki and Tommy Lee are in that video, right?
They're the police officers. Yeah.
Yeah. I got them to do that. I'm in the video. What am I talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I'm in there with Tawny, and there's a scene in the restaurant, I think. So we shot that. I used, I think it was Alexis. She produced it, and that was a fun. It didn't get the kind of coverage, of course, that Round and Round got. But at the end, I wanted to put Milton back in as the stunt driver as a joke. It didn't go over too well, but it was fun.
Well,
At,
talking
at
about
the end,
talking about that video, Marshall. I didn't want to cut you off, but talking about that video, the band members are in different places. So Bobby and Robin are in one place, and Juan and Warren are another place, and they snap their fingers, and then the women come, sort of like a Happy Days thing. And now I got to ask, because I told Steven, what next time you're in LA, we got to go to some of these locations. What was the restaurant that you were in?
oh, I don't know the name of it, and I don't even remember. It's on Melrose. I know that it was on Melrose, probably 7 blocks east of Fairfax. I mean, I know LA really well, but I can't remember the name of it. It was a corner. It was on the northwest corner, and it took up a corner. Maybe you know what it is. I don't know.
The name is in the video. It's one word. Maybe it was called Galtz or.
That sounds close. Honestly, I can't remember. But
who knows what it is?
That was another guerrilla shoot where when we shot the stuff outside with Nikki, and all of it was low budget, again.
Mm-hmm.
But that was fun. It was a fun thing because we got to use the Roxy stage, and that was nice. And
was Lou Adler an owner of the Roxy at one point?
Yes.
Yeah.
And is to me, he's my hero, and I've always admired him. I've worked with him a few times. He's just he's it. He's the Shohei Ohtani of rock of the music business. He is. And yes, Lou owns the whiskey, the Roxy, and the Rainbow, along with Elmer and Mario. Now it's their children, their grandchildren.
Grandchildren, yeah. That Roxy stage had its place in cinema. Up in Smoke, Lou Adler was producer of the Cheech and Chong movie. The Ramones Rock and Roll High School, also the live performances filmed on that stage at the Roxy, and the Back for More video. So next up is Wanted Man. I've been waiting to make my trip to old Tucson to visit that set, which is still there.
Yeah. We had to make another video. I wanted to get one because Back for More was, the video now was replacing airplay on radio. So Robin and I were discussing, hey, let's be cowboys and let's that, and we'll go to old Tucson because I know we're on our way there. And we did. We got there. We made a deal. I can't remember Mark. I can't off the top of my head. He was the director, and Alexis, the same people who did Back for More, were the producers. But we created the stories. We mean Robin and I, Steven. Anyway, make a deal, and we go to old Tucson, and it was a great shoot. Alexis, the producer, was the woman in the bar. Like the chick in the bar that all dressed up and Western. Anyway, she was there. Wally Verson, who was our tour manager, is in there, but the gunfight scene was with me and the five guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a cool. We'll show a picture. It's such a cool moment of everybody.
Fred Saunders is the name of the guy standing to left. I'm standing between Wally and Fred Saunders. Fred Saunders was the head of. He was security for the band.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a beautiful guy. Everybody was really great, on that tour. And so we got there, and I think we did everything. Yeah, we did everything in a day. And that night we're playing a gig, I think in Tucson or Phoenix, and it was sold out. I had hired 10 bikini clad beauties, all carrying gold records. I had Atlantic because the band had just sold 1.5 million albums. So I had the film crew there, everybody's ready. And we shot that plus some of the live stuff that we cut into the video of the band. Well, guess what? They lost all the footage, all of it. And we had to do it all over again. And I'm talking about the footage of the concert at that night.
You presenting, yeah.
So I had to do it all over. I think we did it in Washington, Seattle, or someplace. And that was me to hear, ladies and gentlemen, the band just sold 1.5 million. So that was my part. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that video turned out to be great. Did you ever see the poster that we had made up? Wanted?
Yeah.
That was so cool.
It was reissued in the box set. It's such a cool, the Wanted poster. Yeah. But it is available in the last box set that came out. Let's see here. Not all the singles were videos, but right after Wanted Man, you had the idea to make a video for You Think You're Tough, right?
Well, you have that timeline better than I do. Yes.
Well, it's 84, so same year. I'm not sure which came first, but you Think You're Tough was on the EP.
Yes, but because of the demand for content at MTV, I wanted to get another video out there, and I asked Ozzy if he'd do it. I had to drive to Palm Springs because he was in rehab or something, and he was really great, nice guy, because we toured with him when we first started, and so he did that. I directed that video, and then from then on, we took total control over our videos, because after they lost that footage, it was priceless, man. I don't know how they lost it. They shipped the tape back I think we used film on that, and it was gone.
The Lay It Down video, it's right up there with Round and Round. MTV played it like crazy, and it was such a memorable concept. I had Whit Hertford on my show with Steven, the young man who plays young Steven, 5-year-old Steven, at the birthday party, and he told me Marshall Berle directed the video, which was something at the time not everybody knew. The directors didn't get the credit that they did in later years. And so when he told me, and I said, I got to know more about this video shoot, and everyone said, well, you have to ask Marshall. So I'm glad I have my chance.
That was a lot of fun. To get those kids, we had an open audition, and we had over 100 kids show up, and we were looking for somebody that looked like Steven and somebody that looked like the girl that we were using in the video. That kid doesn't look like Steven, but he was, the way he could be directed, it was perfect. So that I can't remember the director's name, but he was a high-end commercial director. So when you look at that party scene, it's beautiful, the way it was shot, the lighting and everything, and the clown, that guy. Oh. Anyway, I did that.
Passed. We looked up the clown. He was kind of popular, like a late night show sort of. The clown I can't remember his name, but he's passed.
We shot that at Paramount Pictures, and on a soundstage, and it was great. And that was a great shoot, and of course, it was a big video. It was very successful, and the song got a lot of airplay.
Yeah, I think it's the second, biggest single for RATT. Whit said that he was sort of told maybe don't get too close to the band. They might be a little rowdy. So he said his stuff was shot, and they were trying to say, okay, now we'll shoot the band footage later. But he said as a kid, he was looking at Marianne, the former Playboy playmate who was on the cover of Invasion of Your Privacy. He was excited by all that.
Yeah, that's great. I'm so glad.
Yeah. So anyway, a definite piece of music history. The next single would have been "You're in Love."
"You're in Love" was a great video, and we got a lot of airplay. I direct that one, and what I did was I used a lot of old footage from the cartoon stuff and Groucho Marx and Marilyn Monroe at the end of the video going something. And I think the band, I don't know who in the band, I think they got tired of thinking they were clowns or something or funny, but I just thought all that stuff was cool, and it got a lot of airplay, that particular one.
That was a time when, Twisted Sister was adding humor to their videos as well. And I think it was working. And obviously your background with your uncle, you did put a stamp of humor, which might have brought people who weren't heavy metal fans into watching some of these bands and some of these videos. The dance video, you and I were talking about it briefly. That video, you had some trouble.
Yes, that's. I think dance was a big hit on MTV. I think it was in the top 10 for quite a while, and so Mario Maglieri, God bless him, rest his soul, let me use the whiskey, but of course, in return, I fed everybody. There was like 100 people in the audience at the Rainbow, so so it all worked out great. But so it was a 2-day shoot. I think it was maybe it was a 1 day. I can't remember. It doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
We're all set up. We shoot Dick Shawn, who a lot of people don't know who he is. He's in the movie. It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World. He's probably the number one favorite guy at a Friars Club roast. He's a comedian, and he does the opening. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a starter tonight. The Krell Monsters. I made him say that, and that was sort of an inside joke between whatever.
Well,
anyway,
we should explain that Krell was a product, Marshall.
Well,
if you want to explain it, go ahead.
It all goes back to David Lee Roth and I were coming when I was on the road in '78 with them, with the Van Halen, and we're coming up with ideas. And one of them was, let's put out a press release. And I had a 8mm camera, and I was shooting footage everywhere we went. And he said, it's somewhere out there. He said, we'll call you Snade. Oh, he said, we'll call you Krellman. And I said, Snade. I used the word Snade. Snade Krellman, famous Dutch cinematographer. And we're going to show you stuff you've never seen. Warner Brothers did not like that. But anyway, Krell became what do you call it? A euphemism for cocaine. And that was used by, I think, Motley Crue started. In fact, I think they called their publishing company Krell Music. But anyway.
That name stuck with you, though.
Yeah.
Dick Shawn introduces the band.
Sorry. Thank you. Dick Shawn introduced the band in the video. And on a side, so we're waiting for Steven. Our beloved Steven, our singer. We got him all set up, ready to go. He's supposed to be there at 4:00. It's 6:00, and nobody can find him. And I got everybody looking for him, and we can't do it. So we finally find him. Somebody found him, brings him to the whiskey, and he was, he must have been up all night. He was a little tired. He said, man, I can't. I said, you gotta, I said, just get up there, do one song. So I told all the camera guys, get everything, we had anyway, Stephen was so tired that we got one take, but his performance was perfect, and he was great.
One of the things, though, is you couldn't tell though. Stephen looks great in the video, and it looks like you would have had a lot of time to work on it. That story reminds me of Jim Morrison. There's a famous story about playing the whiskey where Jim didn't show up for the first couple sets, and here's Stephen. Now, as the guys are becoming rock stars, because when you met them, they were kids. Now they're getting famous. They're on MTV. Were they becoming more difficult?
Uh, not really. I the only difficulties would be with each other, and that was few and far between. We played a gig in San Juan, Puerto Rico. We were headlining a show there in this 10,000 seat arena indoors, and I think I'm not sure if Bon Jovi was on that show or not, but anyway, long story short, we get there and the band goes on the stage and the crowd is like out of hand. There's no security there. It's really bad. I'm freaking out. And the band's playing and the people are taking these 12 by 12 inch squares off the ceiling, the styrofoam square, pouring lighter fluid on them and throwing them out into the stage. And the guys are playing and Juan gets up there and he starts speaking to the audience in Spanish. And Bobby thinks, hey, if you guys are watching this, I may be all off, but this is what I remember. Bobby got mad and they were like arguing on the stage. It was a bad gig. It was one of the worst gigs I've ever been to. So they play round and round, and they usually come back for an encore, and shit's flying on the stage. And I had the limos out there. I said, let's get them out of here. And we left fast. We got back to the hotel, and then Robin and Bobby got into a fist fight in the middle of going into. But it ended quick as it started, and boys will be boys.
The guys all sort of said Robin was sort of the enforcer. If somebody was going to act up, Robin was a big guy as well. Stephen told me stories about them fighting on a plane. I think it was Robin and Bobby again. And he said that there was a screen on the plane, like a fireplace. Does this make sense?
I think what Stephen's referring to is we went to Japan. I was going to tell you this, that we were, the first time we went to Japan, the promoter, Mr. Udo, wanted us to play one giant show, in a 5,000 seat or whatever. And they weren't super big, but they were pretty big at that time in Japan. And I said, no, let's just play 2,000 seat venues, 1,800 seat venues, and we'll stay for as long as you want us to. We played 10 or 12 shows. It was a big success. So anyway, we're flying first class on JAL, and I mean the best service in the world. And all the people up front, are all Japanese people, well groomed, well dressed, mild mannered. And Bobby starts drinking and drinking. Now he takes peanuts and he starts throwing them at people. Hey, Bobby, you did it, man. And I had, the captain came back and said, you got to calm this guy down or we're going to return. So I had, I think it was Wally Verson, or one of the guys come back and grab Bobby and take him in the back and remove him there because it was embarrassing. But it wasn't really a fight.
There's a lot of those stories. For a lot of years of me knowing Stephen, he would say, well, it's not like we were the most dysfunctional band. I told him, I beg to differ. I've now worked with 4 out of 5 of you, and you're all pretty dysfunctional. Amazing that Stephen and Warren are playing together again, because, boy, those guys had their differences. Marshall, I say a band is like an arranged marriage. You get these guys together who maybe wouldn't hang out in real life, but now you're stuck together, especially if you have success.
Yeah, that's true. you know, whenever you're dealing with that many people in a band, you're going to have five different personalities, and but you know, the band got along. They did their job. We we had a great success. You know, all the time I was with them, and then they uh, after Reach for the Sky, we parted amicably. No, everything was cool. Still do. We still talk. Uh, but
The
shit
amount
happens.
they, uh, they have a lot of respect for you. And you know, I haven't seen Stephen come to a sound check in 5 years, but when he knew that you would be at the last gig in Tampa, he made sure to be there. Warren as well. I think they're all very grateful for what you did for them. A bunch of young guys sort of needed some direction. So I know that there's a lot of respect for you and what you did for them. So you were up through all of Reach for the Sky, right? Let's talk about before we get to that '86 Body Talk. The band is in The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy. You told me this story. It's a great story why you ended up in that movie.
Somebody at Paramount came to us and wanted to use, I can't remember the song they wanted to use in this movie with Eddie Murphy. And so I met with the director. Uh, Please excuse me if I don't remember his name, but he was a good guy. And and I said, that's the wrong song because he told me what the scene was. He said, it's going to be a bunch of bikers in their club watching MTV and, and they're going to have a fight. So I suggested Body Talk. So I made a deal with Paramount for $80,000 to build the stage that they took on their tour with them. And, and so the video, uh, that stage, Paramount paid for that, and we shot it there, and that was a great video, a really good performance video. Robin looked good in that. Everybody, Juan, Bobby,
It's such a
Steve.
memorable scene in the movie because it's this big fight scene, and the Body Talk music video plays throughout the scene.
Yeah, it did, and that was fun working with them. Uh, it was
Yeah.
a good deal.
Michael Ritchie was the director. He also directed Bad News Bears
Thank you.
and Fletch and a few other sort of legendary movies. Okay, so then that brings us to after Body Talk, Slip of the Lip.
Slip of the left. Wow. I love that video. We shot
Mhm.
that in New Orleans. Actually, oh my God. We were playing Shreveport the night before. And we have I don't want to mention his name, but we had this guy uh, from Texas who was he became our head of security guy. And he was an actual deputy sheriff from this county in Texas. I'm not going to mention the name. And so he was a great guy. I really liked him. And he was good. He worked with ZZ Top. And so we're in Shreveport, and I had dinner, and we had played the gig, and there was a bunch of kids running around the hotel, you know, trying to find the band. And all of a sudden we hear sirens and people running, and there's like 20 police cars all over the place. And what happened was is our security guy uh, uh, called the police because he got in a fight, and he said he was, I'm an officer, I'm under attack, and it was really he was drunk. And that was that night. And the next night, when we were in New Orleans, he got handcuffed to his bed, and they took his badge and his gun and his wallet. These two girls, I think they were girls. Anyway, slip of the lip. I went into a bunch of strip clubs, and we held auditions because I wanted to find some dancers and try to use an effect. And so at the beginning of that video, the guy sitting down, who's the cop, is the guy I'm talking about.
Mhm.
I don't know if you want to put that in there, but at the beginning, Charlie Hernandez, the production manager, great. Charlie was a great guy. You see you see this girl, the photographer, walking into the stage door. So we shot all the live stuff, and then there's a scene where we shot it half speed on the camera. It's in black and white. Robin's in there, and it's and I had this shot of a champagne bottle that I was shaking, and I wanted the cork to come off, and MTV wouldn't allow that. Of course, they did. Everybody using it now. We did something else, but that was a fun video. We shot it in New Orleans, and we had a great time there. That was cool.
Yeah, a fun video, and the idea of the pictures and the freeze frames. It's a fun video. Whenever I take a picture of Steven with a fan and their cell phone makes that camera noise, I make the joke that would tell me more about Dancing Undercover, but no one ever seems to get it. But
the guy that did the opening, good afternoon, Steven. You know, the Mission Impossible, but he was great. Cut this out. I'm sorry.
No,
go ahead.
Fine. I can't remember things I did yesterday. The fact that you remember any of this is amazing. Was that a famous actor, the voice, or just?
Yes. And I'll have to think about it for a while. He's somebody. He is somebody famous.
Can you remember anything else he did?
No, I have to think about it, and maybe I'll. Jesus. You know, everybody I know from my uncle's days and all those, they're all dead. Mm-hmm. So now who am I going to ask? I'm kidding. Okay.
We're running out of, you're the last one. You better remember some of this. Okay, so after that, now Reach for the Sky, there's only 2 singles on Reach for the Sky, Way Cool Jr. and I Want a Woman. Way Cool Jr. video, the end of the video, the girl's walking up the street with the guitar. Where is that?
That was on either 3rd Avenue or Beverly Boulevard by a theater. It was late at night. Marty Callner directed that video, who is a genius. And I love Marty Callner. And I asked him to do it. And I Want a Woman was something I shot in Michigan. We shot that video in Michigan. And I think my son was in it. Anyway.
The I Want a Woman video is sort of the concert experience at that time. The big Aquanet and the high heels and the people in the audience. And a lot of fans made that video.
Yeah, that was fun. That kept us going. And the 2 singles from Reach for the Sky, Atlantic selected those and worked them. But, you know, that album went platinum. But the shoe starers were coming in real fast, and it was changing the music scene. And rap it all started happening right at the end of the 80s, the beginning of the 90s. The music scene changed. And of course, the band themselves, after Robin passed away, and they got into all these different beefs, things change. But I'm so glad that Steven and Warren are working together again. It's great because they got some great songs.
Yeah, to be a fly on the wall backstage where I saw you in Tampa, to see the 3 of you talking, the amount of history between you and the things that you've seen and fortunately survived. You know, that's the big one. You guys did a lot of living.
Well, we did, and it was fun. One of the best shows was New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1989, at the Tokyo Dome, Bon Jovi, Rat, and Kingdom Come, who I happen to personally think they're great. I love that band. But that was a great show. And the band got their first $1 million payday for that one show.
Yeah, pretty crazy. Yes. And think about that. What you're talking about 1989. So that $1 million would be worth a lot of money, a lot more money.
Right, exactly.
Today.
Today's money, I don't know what it would be today, but it was a lot. And it was a good show. And it was the last time I got to see Mr. Udo, who just recently passed away, the greatest promoter in Japan.
A real legend in that business. Everyone who went to Japan at that time worked with Mr. Udo. Definitely, sadly gone now. It's amazing some of the things that happen with RATT. Bon Jovi, Poison, all these bands open for RATT.
I got them. I got both those bands to open for us. And the only time that I'd have arguments with, and there weren't really arguments with Steven and Ron, or maybe Bobby or Juan. Warren didn't, he didn't say a word. He was a good guy. He had nothing to say, but they would get pissed off if I let Poison use anything. They wanted to use extra lights, and they wanted to have this special mic. Steven didn't like that, but that, I let them do whatever they wanted to do, the opening acts, because I knew the power that they had in helping RATT sell out every show on that first tour. With both those bands, we sold out most of the shows. And both those bands became headliners, and we started running out of opening acts, but it was great. Bon Jovi's manager at the time was Doc McGee. Do you know Doc?
Sure.
Oh, great. He's my friend, and he's. I think Doc McGee and Irving Azoff are the two greatest personal managers in our business. And Howard Kaufman goes with Irving Azoff. Those two guys. Doc McGee. He's the man.
Oh yeah, no, it's interesting. And you talked about getting those bands on the tour, whereas the band might not understand. They have rivalries or competition. It takes management to say, look, I got to get people in these seats, and their fans will like you, and your fans will like them, and it's a good bill.
Well, it understandably, the band thought that they were, they're the ones that are filling those seats. And by far they are. But, Bon Jovi got so big that we played a show in New York. You got to help me out. In New Jersey, there's the
Meadowlands Arena?
Yeah, the Meadowlands. And we were headlining, and Bon Jovi was the second band. And they were so huge there, they could have filled that place themselves. Anyway, I gave them a $25,000 bonus. We gave them a $25,000 bonus, for them helping sell the show. And that was Doc was managing at the time. And that was it. So, they had a great run, Jason. Mm-hmm. And if Robin could have stayed healthy, I think that they would still be doing it as a band. I truly believe that. He kept everybody in line.
That is what everyone who's known him and been involved in the band has told me. So you leave before Detonator. When the Detonator record comes out, we're definitely heading towards the grunge era. I don't think Robin played very much on that album. I think his health was also beginning to be in and out, and eventually leaves the road. And as we talked about, ultimately will pass from from a sickness of his addiction, mainly is what I mean. And so, what do you do after RATT? Were you disappointed? Was it time for you?
Oh, that was the best. The '80s were the best year of my life, of my professional life in music because of RATT. And I had a couple other bands that we had on Time Coast, but being with RATT was the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my career. That was it. That was great. After
Yeah.
RATT, uh, I wasn't doing much. Uh,
Well,
in
comedy is in your blood, obviously, and laugh.com is a website that you put together that showcased some pretty major talent.
Yeah, I was going to say in 1994, people didn't know too much about the internet, and I was always on top of what was going on, and I decided to register the name. I wanted comedy.com, and when I called, you got to talk to these people, and they said no, that's not available, but laugh.com is. I said I'll take it, and it was like $80 for to pay for that, the rights to own that. And so I had that, and I go, I've got all these roast CDs, roast recordings from Milton's Roast with Johnny Carson, Ed McMahon, and all the greatest comedians, all X-rated material. So I put together two CDs and started Laugh Dome Records, which I used laugh.com as the URL. And then I got a customer, a guy from, I didn't know who he was, from the Silicon Valley. And he says, here's my credit card. Send me everything you have. And I said, wow, that's, I just started. This is something new. His name was Bob Cohn, Kohn. And he liked what I was doing so much that he bought my company from me, and together I still was a stockholder, and I was working in the company, and I was doing we formed a record label, laugh.com, and the first thing we were able to do was get George Carlin to come on board as an owner, and we also had the rights to all of his recordings, and that was a big deal. So Bob raised the money for the capital for us to get started, and we signed everybody, almost every comedian you can think of, Lily Tomlin and the Smothers Brothers and Firesign Theater, and it goes on and on and on. And we had the rights to that, and it was doing great. And then when the MP3s came out, the digital stuff started happening. That was the end of that, and so the physical business completely disappeared. We stopped selling physical comedy off that website a long time ago. It's it's all been good.
Changing times. Is it around that time you moved to Florida?
I moved to Florida in 1995.
Mm-hmm.
Moved here in '95, and been here ever since.
Yeah, and retired now. How long have you been retired?
Gee, I don't know. I'm semi-retired.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not retired. I'm semi-retired. I still own some comedy recordings that are sold on different websites. So I do that. You know, I have a nice home, a nice wife, and grandchildren, and it's all good, man. You know.
It's great to hear people escape that industry and live a happy and successful life.
That's true. Because almost everybody I started out with when I went to William Morris is dead, gone, all of them. Anyway, but it's been great, Jason, really.
Marshall, have you ever considered writing a book?
Yeah. And I've sent some of the pages, some of the chapters to a couple people I know. And after a while, I go, you know what? I'm not going to do this. If I do, it'll be with you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm glad that you.
Have you ever written a book?
No, but I can probably Google it. It's probably not that hard.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll send you a couple chapters, and objectively, I can't be objective about it because it is a weird trip. You know, it's not a normal trip.
Well,
So,
your life also, you know, there's just been so many different things that have happened, and it's a story that only you have. And as you said, there's not many people, many of your peers have passed, and so you sort of are the last of these stories. You joked earlier that who am I going to ask? No one else is around, but you are sort of the last of some of these stories, and it's a history that people would love to share. When I posted a picture of us from the Tampa show, suddenly 150,000 people were liking this photo, and just so I didn't know what happened. And I knew I appreciated you and your contribution to the music business and to RATT, but I was surprised to see how many other people did as well, which is why I'm so honored that you took a little time to sit and talk about it, because some of the questions we answered today are questions that we get asked every day. Stephen doesn't remember everything. He certainly lived hard, but it's so great that you still have it and still remember it.
oh yeah, I appreciate that.
I got to say thank you again, Marshall. First of all, I'm honored. This is your first long form interview. I saw you in the RATT Behind the Music answering a few questions, but this is the first time that we were able to dive this deep. And you've had such a career. There's been controversy, there's been triumphs, there's been a little bit of everything. And so there's only so much we can fit into a 1 hour YouTube interview. Hopefully, you'll share more stories, as we said. Who knows, maybe a book or something one day. But I thank you for taking this time and sharing your world with so many of us today.
Oh, thank you very much, Jason. You're a very nice man, and you're a very talented guy too. I wish you all the very best, man.
Thank you, Marshall. And thank you, everyone, for watching. And we'll see you again in the next video.
Okay. See ya.